What's up? Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome in. Another edition, Monday Live. I'm Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com, part of the Clemson Maven multimedia platform covering all things Clemson athletics. Before we dive in, take a minute, remind you to subscribe to the channel, like the videos. As you see, we starting to put out more stuff, and if you came here for my weekly opening monologue on baseball, you're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to have one for you tonight. Me and Will's going to throw something together tomorrow. That'll be out tomorrow. I'm not going to touch on much baseball today other than to say, brutal weekend. Disappointing end to a very successful season. And we'll dive into that more tomorrow. Look forward to that. This weekend has all, don't get me wrong, I've been very tied up with baseball, but starting about midday Saturday, the tide kind of started to turn, and the focus turns to recruiting because you're in the middle of that big official visit weekend. We all know what happened last year. Coming off that thing, it was a rousing success. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kept just up to a dozen commitments over the next month. And I am expecting similar results. I've been saying I've been expecting similar results. At the same time, I've also said I'm not expecting quite the same from last year because there were more uncommitted guys on campus last year than there were this year. And you might not get 12 out of this thing, especially over the next month. Maybe you do by the end of the cycle, but over the next month, maybe you don't. But I'm going to tell you, you can't get off to a better start than what we've seen already. Tonight, Sammy Brown jumps on board. A lot of people have been talking about how he's been such a starting to be a heavy lean towards Georgia over the past 2-3 weeks. They sent some recruits down there, Dylan Rayola, their quarterback recruit, so some other commits down there to his high school to organize a personal workout and everything. And a lot of people kind of jumped on that. And to me, the thing about that is, or that thing that always stuck out to me, was they had to send people to him, and the reason they sent people to him was because they were having a recruiting event that weekend and he chose not to attend. So they had to send people to him. That was always something that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. As everybody knows, I was saying 50-50 because I think there was things that he loved about both schools and things he liked about both cultures. But I think that's what won out here in the end, the culture. Again, I've said it many times. Every time I've talked to him, it always comes back to culture. And there's something about that Clemson culture that resonates with him. It resonates hard with him. And I had forgotten that he told me this until I went back over some quotes from some stories I did on him earlier. He told me a while back, he had always said he was going to take his visits and decide possibly in July. But I remembered the day that he told me a long time ago that you never know. He might get somewhere and decide, hey, this is it. This is the spot. And I might decide to commit on the spot. And that's exactly how it transpired. He knew before he left town yesterday. And that is the first domino. If you follow me on Twitter, if you follow me on Facebook, you know I got 4 more out there. So I think there are 4 more coming. And anybody that follows me knows I'm not going to name them. I'll never name them until after they come out. I'm not in the habit of spoiling kids' surprises. But I've been asked all day long, when's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one? I don't know for sure. I think the next one's coming soon. How soon, I can't be sure, but I think the next one's coming soon. I think another one is coming maybe a couple weeks from now, and there's 2 others I'm not sure when they're going to come. So that is the timeline on those 4. But again, anybody knows me, I'm not going to start naming names. But I think Brown is the first domino, and there's going to be some big time kids jump on board. It's just going to be a matter of who. And I mean, because you got the number at wide receiver supposedly 2. I still maintain it's going to get to 3, because you're not telling a guy like Mike Matthews no. You're not telling a guy like Bryant Westco no. You're not telling a guy like Cam Coleman no. And I don't think they tell Alex Taylor no. He's the first guy they offered in this class, and I know the staff loves him. They love him far more than some of the fans do. They love what Alex Taylor brings to the table. So there's some of these kids that you can't tell them no, but you might end up having to. But I'm not even going there. I don't. If you get so many that want to jump on board, obviously you'd have to tell somebody no. I'm not sure we're going to get to that point, but this is why I've maintained that I think we get to 3. Because you're not going to tell one of those kids no. If you're already at 2 and another one wants to jump on board, you're not going to tell one of those kids no. Let's put it like that. It might be kind of a race to see who wants to fill those spots first. And I'll say this, people that have been ragging on Tyler Grisham, saying he can't recruit, we might not be hearing any more of that stuff here for a while if what I think is going to happen is going to happen. Yes, Sammy Brown is a 2-time state champion wrestler. So that bodes well. Kid's already – he's 230 pounds, man. He's just a physical specimen. He'll be ready physically today. He steps foot on campus. Yeah, Dabo's just getting started. I tend to think, hey, what's up, DJ? I tend to think he is. I think this is a big recruiting class for Clemson. I thought they'd knocked it out of the park with the last class. I know the star ratings or the recruiting rankings aren't there for some of those wide receiver commits or guys, wide receivers they signed in the last class. But, man, I love Noble Johnson as a prospect. I think he's going to easily outplay his ranking. I think Ronan Hannafin is a guy that doesn't get enough publicity. He's a guy that's rated high, but doesn't get talked about like he's rated high. He's a big body guy, and he can move, man. He's got some wheels. Tyler Brown can fly. I think he was severely underrated. I'm not sure all these guys are going to be ready to play year one, but I think they have high ceilings, and I think they hit on some of those kids. I just think they got a lot of value. I think they got a lot of bang for their buck with the wide receivers last cycle. You add 2-3 more of these 6 guys they had on campus this weekend. You add 2 or 3 of them, and that wide receiver room takes on a whole new dynamic because there are some dynamic dudes that were on campus this weekend out of Coleman and Westco, TJ Moore, Alex Taylor, Braylon Staley. I'm missing one, whoever. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they are some elite level wide receivers that were on campus this weekend. And I've said it for a month now. I think their signing class comes from the guys that were there. I don't think the board expands anymore. I think they're going to get the guy. I think the guys they're going to get come from the guys that are on campus that weekend. How many wide receivers can we get? The number is supposedly 2. But I've said all along that I would not be shocked to see it go to 3, and I think it's going to go to 3. There's just you can't tell some of these guys no. Definitely there's a few guys in here if they want to jump on board, you got to let them jump on board. You just there's the kind of talent we're talking about. You can't turn that away. So I think they're going to take 3. I think 3 will be the number now. Who know? I don't know. Maybe they say, hey, man, if Mike Matthews decides he wants to jump on board and they already got their guys, who's to say they can't say, hey, we'll sign him as an athlete? I mean, sometimes there's a way to make the numbers work. But Dabo, in general, is a big time stickler for the numbers, man. He's got his number and he's going to stick to them. But he's been known to oversign a time or two here and there. So we'll see. I think the number is going to be 3. KJ Bolden. What about KJ Bolden? Clemson is going to lose some guys at safety this year. And I know Bolden's listed as an athlete. They're recruiting him as a safety. So there is ample opportunity for early playing time for any safety Clemson signs in this class. I think Clemson knocked it out of the park on these visits, man, with all these guys. It don't mean you're going to land them all. I'm not sure they're going to land Bolden. I think there's a lot of things about Clemson that appeals to him. I'm not sure they're going to land him. If there's a safety that was on campus this weekend, I think they really made a move with, I think it's Ricardo Jones. If I've had to pick between one or the two right now, who's got the better odds of landing with Clemson, I'm going with Jones over Bolden. Is it true that Clemson is trying to flip DJ Lagway from Florida? I have not heard a peep about that. I think that ship has sailed. The only way that door would be opened again, Lagway would have to open it. Clemson's not going to put the press on him being committed to Florida. This whole thing got started back on Mother's Day because DJ Lagway tweeted out a photo saying Happy Mother's Day of him and his mother, and he was in a Clemson uniform. Really rubbed some Florida fans the wrong way, and I see why. I mean, I get it. I don't know if it was just something he didn't really think about the impact it was going to have, or if he was trolling, or what the reasoning was behind the photo. But that's where all this talk originated from. I ain't heard a peep about Clemson trying to flip Lagway. I don't think Clemson's going to take a quarterback in 2024. I think they are going to put their focus on 2025, and if they decide they need to bring one on in this cycle, they'll get one from the portal. Seems like Matthew's mom really liked Clemson. Yeah, he's one I've not touched base with today, but based on everything I've seen and from some people I've talked to, yes, I get the impression she really enjoyed it. I think this is going to come down to Clemson, Tennessee. I think the Vols. I think the Vols are serious contenders. I think Clemson's a serious contender. Kind of like a few weeks ago with Sammy, I'm going to say 50-50. I don't know which way this one's going to go. He's going to follow through and take all his visits. So you just, I know I say it a lot, but you're going to have to let these kids take these the ones that are still going to take visits. You got to let them take their visits and kind of see where things stand after that. Yes, the new linebacker offer. He was on campus this weekend. They would I put it out there that day not to take that to mean that they were losing out hope on Sammy Brown or anything like that. They would absolutely take both. This is a guy that has kind of blown up over the past, I don't know, month or so. He's only a 3-star guy. His name's Wyatt Simmons. Like you say, he's out of Arkansas, Texas, Mississippi State, Illinois, Arkansas, Auburn. They all recently offered. He just took an official to Auburn. It was kind of Brent Venables in Oklahoma that kicked this thing off, though. And once Venables got in, his stock skyrocketed because if Venables wants you as a linebacker, you must be pretty dang good. He ended up leaving town with an offer. I think that's another one. I think Clemson's very much in it. How in it at this point, I'm not sure. Just kind of starting to track him, but yeah, I think they've definitely got a realistic shot with him, and they absolutely would take him. We have Devin and Champ at defensive line. Any other defensive line recruits? Clemson's done at defensive tackle. They still need 2 defensive ends. They had 2 on campus this weekend. Edric Houston, 5-star guy, 4-star Darian Mayo. Houston's out of Buford, Georgia. He's going to be a tough pull out of Georgia. But like I said last week, and I didn't ever go back and count up how many times it was. I can't remember if it was 2 times or 3 times, but he was either at 2 or either 3 games during the season last year. He's been back during the spring. Now he's been back again. There's something that keeps drawing him back. And a lot of times you see these kids that keep returning for one visit after another, in this kind of time period, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Those kids tend to land with Clemson. There's something that keeps drawing them back. I know that the track record Clemson has for putting defensive linemen in the league is something that's made a mark with him. The culture sits well with him. So he is a guy I would say it's going to be tough to pull him out of Georgia, but do not count Clemson out. I think they're very much in it, and just not sure when you're going to get a decision from him. He's going to finish up, take his visits and that stuff. But don't discount Clemson's chances here, even though I say he's going to be tough to pull out of Georgia. Clemson signed, I think it was 11 guys out of Georgia last year. And, in the middle of the summer last year, I probably would have said the same thing about a lot of those guys. And Clemson ended up pulling them. Apparently, Clemson, if I'm not mistaken, DJ Lagway's mom only took 1 visit, and it was to Clemson, and it was the only. Yeah, I think that is absolutely it. Offensive linemen had 6 of those on campus this weekend too. Touched base with Fletcher Westfall today. He said that he kind of touched on something I said a few weeks ago. He said that he was just blown away by the visit, and that he was I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but it was basically he said he was very anxious to see how the rest of his officials are going to measure up when it comes to this one. That's why Clemson likes to do these things that first weekend in June. They like for most of these kids' first official visit to be there. They want to set the bar so high and make all these other schools meet that bar, because you're going to be hard pressed to find schools that do these kind of recruiting events better than Clemson does. They are very well organized. They know how. They're very well organized, very well put together. You get all these kids around each other, let them see who they're gonna, possibly be playing with. The players on the team now, and the commits or potential commits, because the committed guys were on campus too. So you get all those guys together, get them bonding, get them doing all this other stuff. You give them the state of the program speech. You do the Paul Journey deal with them, and Dabo has them over to his house. They play basketball. I think they watched a baseball game, if I'm not mistaken, over there. And I'm sure everybody's seen pictures of the slam dunk contest and Cam Coleman about jumping out Dabo's roof. But Clemson does these things very well, and for some of these other schools, it's hard to meet that standard. That's why Clemson likes to do it so early. I know a lot of people think that you're better off having gotten the last at bat. That's not necessarily always the case. But back to the offensive lineman. Fletcher's going to keep taking his visits. Some of these guys are hard to get a good read on, but I think Clemson's legitimately in it. Jamison Riggs was there. He's a guy that I think Clemson's legit in it. He's probably the hardest to get a good read on. He doesn't talk much at all. Ronan O'Connell was there. He's probably the one I would least expect to end up at Clemson. William Satterwhite touched base with him today. or either yesterday, told me Clemson was at the top of his list in his top 2. He's got one more visit on the books, if I'm not mistaken. But I love Clemson's chances with him, I'm telling you. And there's one more. I'm missing one more. One more offensive lineman that was there, and I cannot recall it off the top of my head. Let me pull my notes up. Michael Uni. I'm probably butchering his name. Out of Texas. I thought Clemson's had a pretty decent shot with him the whole time. Still think that he's going to take his visits. Some of these kids are just going to have to get to the end of the month, see where we are. Uni, is that how you say it? Uni? All right, I'm good. I've been saying it wrong the whole time. He's one I've never talked to before. It's like Clemson's current running back commit. First time I ever talked to him, David Jamume. The first thing I had to ask him was how to pronounce his name because I knew I was butchering it. Turns out I was. Will TJ Moore take his official visit to Florida this weekend? Well, that is the $1 million question. I'm not sure. I would not be at all surprised to see that visit not take place. But if it does, don't take it to mean that, I know it's been portrayed that he's real high on Florida. I think Clemson killed it with TJ Moore this weekend. I'm not sure Florida can do enough this weekend to win him back over if they were ever really at the top of his list. Let's put it like that. How about recruits you think we are leading on right now? I try to stay away from so-and-so's at Clemson lean or so-and-so's at Alabama lean because oftentimes recruiting changes on a whim. It can change from one visit to the next. I think there are 4 guys out there right now that I am very confident in that are going to be Clemson Tigers. There's 4 right now that I am extremely confident in. Beyond that, it's still kind of wait and see mode. You got to let these kids take their visits, see how things play out, because you just never know what might transpire. Do you have Kathleen Sweeney's donut casserole recipe? That seems to be the special sauce. Hey, anybody that's ever been around Dabo's wife, and I've not been around her a bunch. I've been around her a little bit since I've been on the beat. Not a ton. The most I ever was around her was one night while we were waiting on Dabo, and she was out there waiting on him too. But she is very personable. She is the epitome of a people person. Never met a person she didn't know. I think she is definitely part of the secret sauce. And if I had her donut casserole recipe, wouldn't do me no good. I'd burn it anyway. Chad Clemson, the number for wide receivers in this class is 2. That's what it's supposed to be. If you look at who's coming off the books and talking to some of the targets, 2. I think it's going to get to 3. I've said all along, wouldn't shock me to see it get stretched to 3. I really think it gets to 3 now. Does Clemson have a shot at 2025 running back Gideon Davidson? I touched base with Gid last week. He is announcing on June 14th. That is something that has not been very well publicized. And I can't believe it hasn't gotten any play. He is one of the top running backs in the next class. He is the top target. He is why I didn't spend 1 second last week watching any running backs work out at Dabo Swinney's high school camps because I know he's the guy. He is the top target. There's not going to be another. I don't expect another offer to go out until his recruitment's decided. But it's going to be decided here in the next 9 days. He told me he is down to 3 schools Won't say who they are. He's keeping that to himself. Again, he's going to announce on June 14th. And yes, Clemson very much has a shot with him. I think, in a similar kind of way to Sammy Brown, culture is a very big thing with Gideon Davison and his family. I've talked to his daddy a little bit. Seems like those are things that are big sticking points with them and academics. And Clemson checks all those boxes. But most importantly, for me, when you talk to the kid and you're talking about the perfect fit for what Clemson is and what they stand for and the kind of kids they like to bring in, that's Gideon Davison. He fits the Clemson culture to a T. He is, if he ends up in Clemson, it's going to be perfect fit from both standpoints. Who do you feel is underrated that Clemson is currently recruiting? Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to go with Alex Taylor. I'm telling you, I love Alex Taylor. The more I watch his film, the more I like him. And, he's just not the flashy name because he's not the 5-star. And a lot of fans want to see that 4.4, 4.5 speed, and Alex Taylor isn't that guy. But, man, he just makes plays. He's one of those guys that turns 50-50 balls into 80-20 balls. He's physical. He uses his hands. His footwork is excellent. He gets in and out of his breaks. People are kind of – a lot of people think the only way to create separation is with speed. It's not. Like we talked about last week, you look at Hunter Renfrow, that guy ain't that – he's definitely not the fleetest of foot, man, but I've seen very few better than him at creating separation. It's all about your route running and how you use your hands. And I love Alex Taylor. I think he is a little underrated, even though he is a 4-star, but I still think if you look at where he's ranked nationally, I think he's a tad underrated. I like him. I like him a lot. Any other defensive end being offered? Dominic Nichols got an offer right before the official visit weekend. Too late to kind of get him on campus. We'll see if they can get him there. Wouldn't shock me to see the board expand further there. How many total are we taking in this class? 23, 22, 23, 24. I got it somewhere in that range right now. That thing's kind of fluid, though. You never who might leave at the end of the season or transfer, maybe have somebody transfer out in the middle of the season these days. You never know. That thing's kind of fluid, but I'm going 22, 23, 24 by my count right now. I think we might need you to put a number beside each pair of shades so we can keep up. Yeah, I've never put out as many in such a short time period as I did over the past 24 hours. So that's kind of why on the last one, or I did it on Twitter anyways, that's why I put number 5 beside it. But I document every one of those things, man, so I can keep receipts. I document them on my phone. Nobody's ever asked me for proof of one yet, but I don't know. I've missed on one before, and I readily admitted I missed on it, and I've been using different shades ever since. So far, these are working. Anything surprised me from the weekend? I thought Sammy Brown would take his – I definitely thought Sammy Brown would take his visit to Georgia. I always believed that. Like I said, I had forgot he told me he might commit on the spot one day if he felt it was right. But even if I had remembered that, I still would have expected him to follow through with some more visits. That kind of tells you how hard Clemson knocked it out the park this weekend. They just killed it. Just like last year, man. All of the returns are just over the top. Kids if you see them on Twitter talking about it, man, they just rave. They rave about it to us, privately. It's just, it's unbelievable. It's hard to put into words what they do on these weekends up there. They kill it. It's absolutely kill it. Will Clemson ever overtake South Carolina again in recruiting? I didn't know South Carolina had overtaken Clemson. I don't know. It's been a while since they finished ahead of Clemson in the recruiting rankings. I have to go look it up, but it's been a hot minute. What's the emoji if you miss? No emoji if I miss. I'll just come right out and tell you. The one I missed on was Walker White, the quarterback who ended up committing to Auburn. I've talked about it on here before. When I throw those things out there, they're a little bit. They're not just a projection. I'm not just going on a hunch or a guess. I would call it a very. I wouldn't even call it an educated guess. I'm going by feedback I'm getting from sources. It's not going. It's a lot of stuff goes into it. I'm just not making a projection. When I throw one of those things out there, I think it's a done deal. Period. And I think I talked about it on here at the time, but I think I put Whites out a little bit too early. I was not 100% sure. I was 99.9% sure, and I went ahead and put it out. Turned out, and I found out, and I thought I was right all the way up into the announcement. I mean, I found out right before the announcement that it was going to be Auburn. So that's the one I missed on. If I miss on one, I'll tell you. Yeah, Dale, I knew you was being sarcastic, man. Yeah, he meant that. I don't know what he meant, but I think he was being sarcastic about Clemson going back ahead of South Carolina in the recruiting rankings, because right now South Carolina's ranked ahead of Clemson. So often, many times this time of the year, they are. It's just rarely they are when the cycle ends. It's been over a decade. Brady says it's been 13 years. I knew it's been a while. Yeah, I think about everybody missed on Walker White too. Yeah, I pulled the trigger prematurely on that one, and it cost me. But I tell you, I was very confident when I did it. But the closer we got to the day, it was nagging at me and nagging at me and nagging at me, and turns out there was a reason why. I'm assuming Sammy won't take any other visits now, right? That is absolutely correct. Dabo's got a policy. Once you commit, that's it. You shut it down. We've seen an exception made a time or two in the past where a kid that's committed goes and takes an unofficial visit, but it's something that's cleared with the staff ahead of time. If they do it behind the staff's back, it's not going to turn out well. But no, Sammy's done. He's going to shut it down. No more visits. If there was ever a kid you could call rock solid, it's him. He does not strike me as the type of guy who would commit until he knew 100%, that it was done. Not even an inkling of a doubt. Alex Taylor's stock seems to be rising. If you could pick the 3 wide receivers for Clemson to take, which 3 would you pick? Wesco would be one. God, this one's hard, man. I love TJ Moore too, and I like Alex Taylor. But I love Cam Coleman too. Golly, it's hard. And I like Mike Matthews first and foremost. Then it's a toss-up between Wesco and Coleman. And then I'm probably going TJ Moore. That's probably the three guys at the top. But don't get me wrong, I love Alex Taylor and I love Braylon Staley. I like all six of them guys. But I think those three bring you a whole different dynamic, a whole different skill set. I mean, I think they're the total package. How confident are you in the offensive recruiting staff after June visits? Look, I think Garrett Riley is going to make a difference in recruiting, especially after the offense has been so stale the past couple of years and the quarterback play over the past couple of years. I think he was a breath of fresh air in that building, a fresh set of eyes, different perspective, not only on the offense, but, kind of on some recruiting strategies and maybe even some future targets. I think that brings a breath of fresh air into the program. But if you look at what Thomas Austin did last cycle, I thought he killed it with the three offensive linemen they brought in. That's his first year. I know Tyler Grisham's caught some slack, and I've been asked a lot of times my opinion on him, and I tell you the same thing I tell everybody else, even in private. I think this is a big year for Grisham. The wide receivers, even considering the poor QB play, have underperformed. And I think Clemson's missed on some guys, and that's hurt them. But the ones that are here, I think they've underperformed. I remember when Clemson's wide receivers used to take pride in their blocking on the perimeter. I haven't seen a lot of that the last 2 or 3 years. That's something, you always are looking or hoping that changes. So I think this is a big year for Grisham. I think this is a big class for him. I think what happens on the field this year is big for Grisham. But I've said all along I'm willing to keep an open mind through this season and let's see what happens. I remember a time early in his career when people wanted to run Jeff Scott out of town. So it's always wise to wait a little while before throwing a coach under a bus. They grow and they evolve just like players do. But beyond that, I always said I thought C.J. Spiller was going to end up being just fine. If they land Davidson here in a couple of weeks, he's going to have gotten his guy in 2 cycles back to back very early, after having some trouble the first couple of cycles. And I think that was more about having guys like Shipley and Maffa being underclassmen than it had anything to do with C.J. Spiller. Not saying he is as good of a recruiter right now as he's going to be. He'll be the first to tell you he's still learning. I remember I asked him about it at Media Day last spring, and he talked a little bit about it. He's still learning, but I think he's going to be fine. Gideon Davidson raves about him. Just loves him. So I think the offensive staff's fine when it comes to a recruiting standpoint. Again, the only question I have is at wide receiver, and I think Tyler Grisham's earned some of the criticism he's gotten, but I also think it's too early to throw in the towel on him. He needs to, have a big year this year. And if the preliminary reports coming out of this weekend are to be believed, he is going to quiet some of that criticism up, especially on the recruiting front. I'm telling you. Watch them dominoes start falling. Let's see. Somebody said something about, oh, yeah, here we go. Adding Brown. I guess he meant to say some will say Georgia never really wanted him. I don't do message boards at all. I think they're toxic, except our message board. Ours isn't toxic. But, I think a lot of message boards are toxic, man. It's unhealthy. Get sucked into that crap. But I saw some talk today on Twitter about some posters on Georgia message boards still maintaining late this afternoon that Sammy Brown was going to Georgia. How true that is, I don't know. I saw people saying it on Twitter that they were seeing it on Georgia message boards. I don't know how true it is, but it was out there. This is a gut punch for Georgia, man. And if you see a Georgia fan tell you say they didn't want Sammy Brown, I got 2 letters for you: B and S. Is Clemson in it with C.J. Jackson? The fact that he was not here this weekend kind of speaks volumes of that. I know he's got an offer, and I remember weeks and weeks ago he had put out there that he was taking an official to Clemson, but it didn't work out that way. And the fact that he wasn't there tells you all you need to know. Are there any other big recruits that have officials coming up? If you mean officials to Clemson, no, this was the only summer weekend during the summer they do it. But, a lot of those guys that were there this weekend are going on to take more visits, if that's what you're asking me. Too many to name. They're going places like Tennessee and Auburn and Alabama and Georgia. Georgia's got a big recruiting event this weekend, matter of fact. Yeah, Clemson's still two. Are we still 2 over the 85 scholarships? If so, would Will Taylor end up sacrificing his? Still at 2 over, yeah. If something doesn't change, you got to be at 85 by the time fall camp starts, and Clemson's still 2 over. If something doesn't change, they'd have to yank the scholarships from the 2 walk-on guys. I don't know if Will Taylor's going to give up football. I've not heard any inkling that he's going to. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Next year is his money year in baseball. Playing football is kind of risky in that regard. But I think he loves playing football. If he's going to give it up, that's going to be a hard decision on him. I don't think they're going to ask him to give it up. That's probably going to be up to him. But I haven't heard either way I haven't heard that he's even considering it. So. Do you think Garrett Riley stays his whole contract? Probably not. I don't even remember what his whole contract is. What is it? I forgot. If it's 2 to 3 years, maybe. I think he's here 2-3 years. He's got head coaching aspirations. We all know that. I think he's in a position to where he could be selective. We've seen what happens when offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators, take the first job that comes along and it doesn't work out. And a lot of times they don't get a second shot. I tend to think he'll be selective. I'm not sure he'll be as selective as Brent Venables was, but if he does what I think he's going to do at Clemson, he's going to have offers. He's going to have people knocking at his door and probably backing up the Brinks truck. That I think Kyle Richardson's probably, kind of the guy, the next man up, if you will. I think he's probably, if I had to bet on it, I'd say he's probably right there with Riley all the time, soaking up everything he can. They got very similar backgrounds. So, and I'm a big believer in Kyle Richardson. I think he's got a very bright future calling plays in college football once he gets an opportunity to do it. Man, I know it's only high school. Man, he turned that Northwestern program into a powerhouse. And it had a lot to do with that high-powered offense he ran. It was a variation of the air raid. Again, they got similar backgrounds. Is the recent recruiting success a sign that NIL has improved? That's a good question. Clemson's never going to get in bidding wars for players. Just not going to do it. That's not to say that the players don't get NIL deals. Clemson, if you've listened to Dabo Swinney talk, you've heard him say it multiple times. They're never going to lead with NIL. It's not going to be what they sell their program on. They're not selling it with NIL. That they're going to sell it on that culture. They're going to sell it on, developing your guy on the field or your kid on the field and off the field and turning him into a man and all that good stuff. And NIL is going to play secondary to that. Having said all that, I think Clemson puts together very competitive NIL packages, but they're not going to go out there and bid on guys. They're going to say, hey, this is what you can get here. If you come here, this is what it's going to be, yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of a take it or leave it type of deal. I just think there are enough kids still out there that aren't only chasing the dollar. You just got to find them. And I think Clemson's done a pretty good job of doing that in this class. Yes, I got you. He's not been over there much at all. He's been all in on baseball. Even before the season, when we did media with the baseball team, he didn't want to talk about football. It caught my attention, absolutely, no doubt. But I haven't heard anything. So, is Jeff Scott officially on the staff? No, Jeff Scott is not on the staff at this time. Wonder how many will show up to the all-in cookout. Yeah, that'll be the next on the agenda. Have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Know that number. They'll want to get a bunch of those uncommitted guys back. It wasn't quite as big of a deal last year since Dabo held the big official visit weekend in June. Off the top of my head, I want to say it was mostly committed guys that came for the cookout. Might be the same kind of deal this year. That thing might start playing second fiddle to this big official visit weekend because that's when they're gonna put their best foot forward. That's when they're gonna make their best pitch and knock it out of the park and all that stuff and roll out the red carpet, so to speak. If you're not going to tell us who is next, I can't tell you who is next because I don't know who's next. I really don't. I think there's one that's coming soon. I don't know that for sure, though. There's only one current target, or excuse me, 2 current targets have commitment dates set. Gideon Davidson, who is not even in this class. He's a 2025 running back. June 14th, and Alex Taylor, July 29th. Other than that, I don't know who's next. I don't know who's going to commit when. I didn't know Sammy Brown was going to commit today until late today. I knew he might, but I didn't know for sure it was coming today until early this afternoon. So I can't tell you when they're going to happen. I can only tell you that I think one's coming soon. I think one's coming in a couple of weeks, and the other 2 I'm not sure about. I could see one of the other 2 coming fairly soon. I could see it playing out a few weeks. Same with the other guy. That's about as far as I'm willing to go with it. I don't like ruining. I'm not really in the business of trying to ruin a kid's surprise or anything like that. So no positions, no names, anything like that. I had some people private message me over the past 24 hours asking for hints and positions, and I wouldn't give them to them, so I can't give them to y'all. Sorry. Clemson's wide receiver recruiting overall offensive recruiting pick up enough, maybe it's insurance. Riley holds out a little longer to get that right head coaching job. Hey, very, very possible. Again, we all know he's got head coaching aspirations. I mean, that's we know that. That guy's gonna be a head coach. It's just a matter of when, not if. I tend to think that he'll, be patient and try to wait for the right job. I don't think he's going to be 5 years patient or anything like that. I think Clemson's going to be successful enough where he's going to have opportunities. I mean, it's rare you see a guy like Brent Venables who turned down some of the jobs that he turned down to stay at Clemson. You know what I mean? Not very many people are turning down like the Auburn head coaching job to stay defensive coordinator at Clemson. If it wasn't Oklahoma, Brent Venables is probably still at Clemson. Corey and Gibson. I'm leaning right now towards thinking he's going to take his visits, at least the one to Ohio State. We're gonna have to see where we are after that. I think Ohio State's become a major player in this thing, so we're gonna have to wait and see what happens on that visit. I think it's gonna take place. Still, you gotta like where Clemson stands. I thought he was a guy that could possibly commit during the spring game while he visited that weekend. Didn't play out that way. He's kind of told the media he was going to commit real soon, then backed off of that and stretched it out a little bit further. He's kind of gone back and forth with it. But I think he's definitely going to take that visit to Ohio State. I think I got most of this. I think I got most of it. If I missed on something, I apologize. It's one of the better shows we've had in a while, man. I appreciate all y'all tuning in. I had a feeling this was going to be a good one. I'll end it with this. I think we're just getting started. Again, like I said at the top, I thought this thing was going to be successful and lead to some guys jumping on board. I wasn't really expecting, it wouldn't have shocked me to hear that Alex Taylor jumped on board this weekend, even though he's already got his date set and everything. But I think he's still going to take his visits. But going into the weekend, I thought most of these guys were probably going to follow through and take the rest of their visits. Obviously, I thought there was a possibility that one or two might jump on board this weekend, but I didn't think we were going to see these kind of results this fast. And I know that not all these guys are coming out and committing right now, but as you can probably gather, the staff did some work this weekend, and that work's fixing to pay off in the form of some commitments. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Some of these guys, they got to wait on videos to be made. Again, some of them's going to take more visits. It's just a matter of when they decide to announce it. This thing's already been a little bit more successful this early than I thought it was going to be. It's going to be a fun month, man. Buckle up, hang on. Don't forget, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We would very much appreciate it. And join us once again right here next Monday. Till then, check us out, allclemsontigers.com. I'm going to have a story about my conversation or Fletcher Westfall's recap of his weekend and how it went and everything in detail that he told me. He gave me some good stuff. Look forward to writing that tonight. Be on the lookout for it tomorrow. Till then, I will talk to y'all next Monday. Appreciate y'all tuning in.